Hey, between 1941 and 1944, the Union Pacific Railroad undertook a huge job. The problem is this: they were trying to haul this freight over the Wasatch Mountains out west, and they needed 2 locomotives to pull up that 1.15% grade as it hauled freight and even wartime supplies over to the West Coast. And the locomotives weren't doing it. It's something called double heading when they put 2 locomotives together. So they needed a solution. And this big, massive problem required a big, massive solution. So enter the Union Pacific Big Boy. They built 25 of these things. It's the world's largest steam locomotive. These were truly monsters. So Union Pacific engineers looked at their existing Challenger locomotive, which is the biggest they had at the time, and realized they really needed to bump it up. What they ended up was a 132 foot long and 1.2 million pound locomotive called the Big Boy. Here's a few interesting facts that you need to know. The locomotive ran on a 4884 platform. That meant there were 4 non-powered wheels in the front, 2 sets of 8 in the middle, and 4 non-powered wheels in the back. Now, all those wheels were necessary to provide enough traction force to allow the train to pull its massive load without literally just sitting there and spinning its wheels. The train carried 25,000 gallons of water and 56,000 pounds of coal when fully loaded, and it burned 28 tons every 3 to 4 hours when it was under max power. The firebox was 155 square feet with 967
So the boiler operated at
3,000 pounds of pressure and 5,900 square feet of heating surface. So the boiler operated at 300 pounds of pressure and generated roughly 6,000 horsepower. Now, it could pull a train weighing nearly 8 million pounds up a grade of 1.15%, which was pretty pervasive in that neck of the world. Now, interesting is, in that day and age, no CNC milling machines, no software, no fancy engineering programs. It was graphing paper and some really smart people, which I think is really awesome. That's the little thing we like to call America. So, thanks for joining us this week on Steam Culture. Now, we're going to put a link in the bottom because the Union Pacific Railroad, a few years ago, went through a big restoration effort to restore one of these big boys, and they have documented the whole thing in video. It's fantastic. I hope you go watch it. Hey, I'm Brent. You're watching Steam Culture. You know, I think this is a big piece of equipment, and it is. But we've done some episodes in this show on some even bigger pieces of equipment. One, the Union Pacific Big Boy steam locomotive. Largest steam locomotive ever made. Now, you know, the Titanic was a large cruise ship, the biggest of its day, but now it's dwarfed by modern day cruise ships. Not so with the Union Pacific Big Boy. It was and still is the largest steam locomotive ever made. They've been basically in museums for about 60 years, but through a long-term restoration, they've just put one back on the tracks. I'm excited to show you this video for the first time in 60 years, under steam, going on a trip, the Union Pacific Big Boy. Hey, so I hope you enjoyed that. That's pretty impressive to me, a unique piece of rail history here in the United States of America. You're in for a treat today because we're going to talk about the Big Boy. Not this big boy, the biggest, baddest boy in steam locomotives, the 4014 owned by Union Pacific. This thing was built in 1940s. You can see how massive it is from this video, right? And it is 762,000 pounds of badness. Puts out about 7,000 rated horsepower. Now, it was decommissioned, unfortunately, in 1959 when everything went from coal to diesel locomotives, but still a treat to look at. And it was in the news recently, which is a great story. Now, this past summer, the Big Boy was in Omaha, Nebraska for the College World Series, kind of a PR deal. Everyone got to look at it, and who wouldn't want to look at that, right? It's so cool to see. Well, on the way back home, came up on a freight train that had stalled. And what a great scenario, because this is what the Big Boy used to do back in the day, was haul the heaviest and longest freight loads over the mountain ranges in Utah. So, hey, you know what? No problem. Kind of like your grandpa showing up and still being able to beat you in arm wrestling. This thing isn't even in commission anymore. Rolls on up, as you can see, hooks onto the back and pushes it through the grade and pushes it through the stop, and on it goes to its home. Now that's a bad train right there. So you can Google the big boy, the 4014, and you will not be disappointed, but you will be heartbroken if you don't stop by our channel and have a look. We got great videos. I hope you stop by, and I'll see you next time on Steam Culture.